And then back to Facebook.
Hello everybody. Good evening. 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Welcome. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope you've had a great week. And let's give it a minute just to let everyone get on and join us. And we're talking about Viognier. Hi Cindy, good evening to you. Let's see. First one on. Maureen Hamilton Scott, good evening to you, ma'am. And let's see, Catherine Moorfield Harden. Lovely to see you, Kathy. And Valerie, good evening to you, Valerie. Hope you're doing right. Dennis Sugameli, James Belitho, Mary Grablunas. Yep, we did. We got our background up, and we have a different one. Let's see who else is there very quickly. Donna Goff, Marlene Reddoor, Kimberly Anchel. Hi, Stephen and everyone at Keswick. Hello back to you. Rick Collier, Susan Glenn. Lovely to see so many people. Catherine Smith. Hello from Mom and Me. Hello to you. Glory, Man United for you Liverpool folks. Lynn Pantos, good evening to you, Lynn. Hope you're doing well. Let me just double check a few things. Yeah. Can someone give me, we're watching from Savannah, Georgia. I love Savannah. Wish I could get back. Trish Seinwell. Happy birthday to you, Trish. Hope you've had a wonderful day. God bless you. Hope Jeff's doing well. Jess Nelson. A friendly hello to the Barnards. A friendly hello to the Nelsons back up in New York. Tracy France in Davenport, Florida. Good evening. Oh my God, so nice to see everybody. Let's see. Mark Scharfenmeyer. Susan Glenn. I'm excited. So let's give it one more minute. And again, if you have the 2019 Viognier from Keswick Vineyards, that's what we're drinking tonight. If you don't, that's quite okay. Grab your favorite Keswick wine. Grab a Viognier if possible. If you don't have a Keswick wine, grab a Virginia wine. But let's spend the next sort of 45 minutes or so talking about the wine, having some fun, and learning a little bit more about this obscure grape. So there's Aaron Mathis. Good evening to you. Kevin Norfleet. Kevin and Drew up in Pennsylvania or Philadelphia region. It's great to see you. Marsha's got a watch party on. Absolutely you do. Hi to everyone on your watch party. Let's see else. Lanny and Suzanne White are down in the Carolinas somewhere. Thank you for joining us. I've got my t-shirt. I'm pumped. I'm ready to go. This is Tasting Tuesday. So let me get some wine in a glass. And then let's talk about this rather sort of interesting varietal, a grape that I think Virginia does incredibly well. So pour yourself a healthy pour, and give me 2 seconds and we'll jump right into it. All right, there you go. As always, we just want to wish you and your families, and I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you've had a wonderful weekend, and may you have a rest of an incredible week. I'm excited today because we're talking about a varietal that I've honestly had a little bit of issue with in terms of how to grow it, how to make it. And I think this wine in a lot of instances might reflect our sort of methodology and our sort of philosophical change. As always, if there are any questions, please send them. I've got my wife Kath next to me. We're going to try and answer all of your questions online. And if we don't get to them, doesn't mean we don't find them important. We will answer them tomorrow morning and get that to you. So good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Laney, thank you from Hatteras Island. It's lovely to see you. Hope you and Suzanne are wearing your t-shirts. I've got mine, Tasting Tuesday, which means we're going to swirl, we're going to sniff, we're going to drink, and we're going to have some fun, and hopefully we're going to learn one more thing about Viognier and about wine. So let's jump into it. So Viognier, interesting sort of grape. A grape that's rather obscure, but I kind of love that. You know, the history of it is sort of not quite known, but it was thought to have been brought to the Rhone by the Romans, and it's thought to have originated from Dalmatia, which is present-day Croatia. But if you talk about its spiritual home, it really is found in the northern Rhone in a very small appellation called Condrieu. Outside of that, you know, Viognier has been planted in various regions. I think California does a fair amount of Viognier. South Africa, Australia, if you look in the Margaret River, and South Australia, I think in Eden Valley, I think you're finding a little bit more Viognier. But obviously, Viognier is also planted in Virginia, and you know, I'm a big fan of Virginia. I'm a big sort of proponent, and I think Virginia makes some incredible Viogniers, world class, might I add. So let me know if you think of that. Nancy Bauer, good evening. Hello, Nancy. So what do you think of Viognier off the bat? Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you find it a little bit you don't really know much about it? I find that it's taken me a while to get to know it, because it's a little bit sort of untamed, it's a little bit mysterious, which I love, but it's a difficult grape to grow. It's a difficult grape to get right in the winery. It's probably, out of all the whites we make, it's the varietal that sort of challenges us. And we're going to talk about sort of the challenges viticulturally, what we're doing in the winery. We're going to kind of jump in, we're going to taste the wines, and yeah, we're going to chat about it. And then we're going to tell you how you can get it. Obviously, we're going to give you some discounts and show you how you can get it for free. And then again, please shoot any question my way. I'd love to answer as well. But the first question is, how should you enjoy it? And again, we always say that, you know, wine should be enjoyed in the manner in which you enjoy it. There's no right or wrong way to enjoy wine, right? But we always say, if you have a decent wine, the one thing you should do for yourself is stick it in a decent glass. So I've got it's just a Riedel glass. It's thin, it's tall, it's narrow. It's going to concentrate the aromatics, because we're going to talk about Viognier and how exotic it is and how sort of voluptuous it is. Serving temperature. Sometimes I think we serve our whites too cold, and I think with Viognier, if you're tasting Viognier with the impression of learning about it, I think whites slightly warmer than what you would is a good idea. If you're trying to just drink Viognier, I think maybe slightly chilled. So I popped this in the fridge for 30 minutes, opened it up probably 15-20 minutes prior to this, and I think that's adequate. But again, this is the way in which I enjoy Viognier. For you, that's the most important. Whatever glass, whatever serving temperature, that's the way you got to do it, right? So yeah, it's an obscure grape, and it's a challenging grape. I think, you know, viticultural sort of decisions really manifest themselves in the wine. You know, I always talk about Cabernet Franc being a varietal that what you do in the vineyard expresses in the cellar. I think if there's one varietal that really kind of mimics that sort of philosophy, it's Viognier. You know, so Virginia's climate is officially regarded as a subtropical humid climate. We get 40 odd inches of rain a year. We get what I think is a very small and short growing season from April through September, because we're harvesting the Viognier in the first or second week of September. And Viognier, I find the ones that I really, really enjoy don't come from warmer regions. I actually like Viognier that comes from cooler regions that still have the ability to ripen fruit. Now, when we talk about ripeness, you know, we've spoken about a lot, but it's not just sugars, right? Sugar is one parameter of ripeness. It's also about acidity, it's about skin development, it's about seed development, it's about flavors. You know, we do a lot of walking and just chewing seeds and chewing grapes and tasting tasters. We put the juice on a refractometer. We look at the bricks. It's very important, because that bricks gives you what the potential alcohol in the wine might be. If you're talking about that and that's interested you, this is 13.8, which is very moderate. You know, I think, you know, that alcohol is just it's a tough one to sort of balance, because we're going to talk about how Viognier struggles to balance. So what are the challenges of Viognier? Why don't we see a lot of Viognier being planted? I think one answer to that sort of question is that it's a bit finicky. It doesn't produce a lot of fruit. It's not a heavy cropper like Vidal Blanc or Petit Manseng. You know, it doesn't produce a lot of fruit per acre. You know, so there is a certain amount of financial investment that goes into growing grapes. I mean, let's be honest, farming is an input cost and an output cost in terms of a product. And obviously, you know, you can't charge 3 times Viognier than you would Chardonnay just because the yields are 3 times less. So it's a tough one to get people to plant in the ground, because it is its yields are actually on the low side. We're talking about 1.5 tons an acre. The good thing about it is we've got 16 acres planted on the estate. It actually is the largest planted varietal in Keswick. If you didn't know that, fun fact, out of the 70 acres that we have planted, 16 acres are designated to Viognier. And we've got 4 blocks. 2 of which are in front of the house. And if I can pull up a graphic here very quickly, I can show you that. There you go. That's the Viognier in front of the house. This is where the fruit for this wine comes from. And on that block, separated by the driveway, so it's 2 blocks, 1 5-acre, 1 2-acre block. It's all on heavy, heavy, heavy clay. And we've spoken a lot about soil and what soil does to vineyards, because especially clay holds a lot of water, and Virginia has a tremendous amount of rainfall. And variable. In normal years, we're getting 40 to 45 inches, right? But in 2018, we had 90 inches of rain. So soils that hold a lot of water affect the grapes very, very differently. Obviously, there's vigor and there's shading and there's a lot more canopy. It also affects the chemistry in terms of potassium levels, and we talk about how that's important to Viognier. But this is the fruit that goes into this wine. It's in front of the house. There's the house behind us. The house built in 1911. You'll recognize it. That is the house on the label as it is. But that's Viognier. You can see it's not prolific. I think those are the 6 clusters that we could find that makes it look pretty cool. But there you go. So viticulturally, it's a tough grape. You need to get it ripe, but you don't want to get it too ripe. You know, if you're looking for a certain amount of sugar in terms of flavor development, because the problem we have, or I find with Viognier, is that people come in saying it has to smell tropical, it has to smell apricot-y, it has to smell yellow fruits and floral and perfumey, and that's right. You know, but sometimes what that means viticulturally is you have to pick the grapes at elevated sort of sugar levels to get that sort of flavor development, right? And then what you do is you end up with a dry wine with an excessive amount of alcohol, 14.5, 15.5, which is excessive. Or you find wines that have a moderate alcohol level, but they have a little bit of residual sugar. If you pick the grape too green, all you're making is an angry Sauvignon Blanc. You know, and then it just tastes like a Sauvignon Blanc that's just kind of tart and nasty, and it's got green apple, and it doesn't scream Viognier in the glass whatsoever. So there's a fine line between picking at the right sugar levels and the right physiological development to give yourself a chance to make the kind of wines that we want to make. And at the end of the day, the wines that we want to make, irrespective of varietal, have to do a couple of things. They have to communicate to you, the consumer, you know, a sense of place. Because we talk about it, the only thing that makes Keswick Vineyards unique is the vineyard. It's the soil, it's the age, it's the row orientation, it's the elevation. It's the one thing that makes us unique. It's the one thing no other winery in Virginia and the world can replicate. When you talk about barrels, someone's going to have the same barrels. Everyone's got winemakers. Everyone has access to the same sort of techniques, additives, enzymes, yeast that we use to make wine. So what we want to do is express in a glass how the grape was grown. And then more importantly, it has to be varietally correct, meaning that to you it has to be discernible as a Viognier. It should not taste like a Chardonnay. It should not taste or smell like a Sauvignon Blanc. Then we're doing something wrong. But more importantly than that, it has to be balanced. And when we talk about balance, we're talking about the components of wine that are harmonious. You know, they're so symbiotic. If you talk about the acid and the fruit and the tannin and the alcohol, it all has to be balanced. You know, so that's what we're looking for. And at the end of the day, what that means is we have a very, very small window in which to pick Viognier. But what we've done in previous years is pick a little bit greener, a little bit on the underripe side. The reason for that is Viognier is sometimes criticized to being flabby. And when we talk about the term flabby, what we mean is that it has oiliness and richness and texture, but it doesn't have the acid to sort of cut through that, right? But we don't want to pick it too green, where all you taste is that sort of crackling malic acid, which is going to come across as a green apple. We don't want you to taste the tartaric or the citric acid, because then it's going to suppress all the wonderful exotic flavors, you know, the spices, the anise, you know, those, excuse me, you know, those wonderful perfumey kind of flavors that you associate and I associate with Viognier. So the window for picking is extremely small. So we taste. We look first and foremost at acid levels, because Virginia doesn't conserve acidity really well. Unless you have elevation and unless you're above 900 to 1,000 feet, you don't get a lot of natural acidity because you lose, malic acid breaks down during the evening, and during the evening our temperatures can be really, really, really warm. So really sites that have really beautifully hot and dry daytime temperatures but cool down at night to conserve the natural acid, and then you get that sort of physiological development and you get the conservation of acidity, that is where Viognier is going to thrive, because acidity in Viognier is key. You know, it doesn't matter if it's sort of hedonistic and voluptuous and elegant on the nose. If it just tastes oily and gummy in the mouth, people are going to be uninspired. And wine, more than anything, has to be inspirational. It has to make you want to take another sip. Wine writers need to write about it and to be excited about it. And I think the one sort of component about wine that people are looking at more importantly than anything else is acidity, is freshness, its vibrancy, its tenacity. And Viognier has never really been in that sort of conversation. So we've been picking a little greener, not greener like underripe, but a little sort of fresher. We're trying to manage the fruit accordingly. We're trying to sort of get the fruit ripe but conserve acidity. And we don't quite know how to do that yet, but we're dealing with a vintage 2019, which was phenomenal. And we were able to harvest these grapes. We harvested them September 4th, 2019, which is really, really normal. We were getting them at 23 and a half bricks. Let me see if I can pull up the video. This is all machine harvested, and I think I have there you go. If you can see me, I can scoot off to the side, but that is how we are harvesting Viognier now. That is the future, mechanical harvesting. We do hand picking most of our vineyard, but there's us harvesting the Viognier in the block. And that is, for those that want to know, is a French machine. It's a Gregoire G3. Toe behind, that's yours truly in the tractor, not trying to break too many vines in post. So we go in, we analyze, we make a decision to pick, and we go and get the fruit as quick as possible, as early as possible in the morning when it's cool. We don't want to be picking at 12, 1, 2 in the afternoon. The reason for that is because what the harvester does, it gets it off the vine, and it does a pretty good job, but there is juice that comes out. And once juice gets exposed to temperatures and gets exposed to oxygen, things are going to start cooking. All right, get it to the crush pad, get it straight into the press, and press it gently. Viognier doesn't yield a lot of gallons per ton, and we're only pressing around 60 to 70% of the juice. The reason for that is we're tasting, and at some point the juice just becomes uninspiring. It gets a little bit phenolic. The skin sort of kind of compounds go into the juice. You get this bitterness. You get that sort of pithiness that comes with it as well. And at that point, we just say, we can get more juice, but we're actually sacrificing the quality of the wine. So that juice is run off very quickly into tank. A lot of people ask, do you use sulfur? We do, to be 100% transparent and honest. We're using a minute amount. And that's just, sulfur dioxide is a preservative. We're adding it in the form of potassium metabisulfite. We add it to the tank, and this is settled without the addition of enzymes. Now, what is an enzyme? An enzyme is a catalyst. It just speeds up a reaction. And if you add an enzyme, the juice settles quickly. We are now just naturally cold settling, so we freeze the tank. The juice settles, and then what we do, we measure what we call the Neefeld turbidity unit. We rack that juice off, and this juice ferments in tank. The first thing that we've done with both our Viogniers this year is that there's no oak whatsoever on either the Viognier or the Le Vendange. The other thing you'll notice as a consumer, we didn't make a signature series and we didn't make a reserve. We've used Viognier in 6 applications during 1 year. Co-fermented with Syrah as a dessert wine, the signature, the reserve, the house, and the Le Vendange Viognier. We're now just sort of condensing that and making 2. So this is tank fermented, tank matured, and we're fermenting at really sort of cold temperatures, 50 odd degrees. We're using a commercial yeast. The benefit of using a yeast is, number one, we're choosing a yeast that doesn't scavenge malic acid, because again, if we're going to pick, in terms of acidity and the conservation of acidity, we want to make sure that the wine reflects that acid and reflects that sort of flavor in the glass. This wine is ML blocked, meaning we don't turn that malic acid into lactic acid. So we try and keep that sort of fresh vibrancy, and then we try and obviously amplify, the characteristics that makes this Viognier. And what is that? It's just yellow fruits. It's peaches, it's apricots, it's pineapples. It's sort of a spiciness to it as well, but it has this exotic kind of nose to it as well. So that's all on paper. Let's see if you agree. Firstly, if you look at the color, it is not dark and golden yellow. I find when I drink a lot of sort of Condrieu wine, so I find them to be really sort of golden yellow. Let me hold it up there so you can see. You would expect this to be a little bit lighter because this is made somewhat reductively, meaning without the presence of oxygen in a tank or a vessel that doesn't allow oxygen transfer. So it's got this beautiful sort of clarity, but it doesn't have the sort of golden sun-kissed kind of color that you sometimes get with Viogniers. But again, no one ever said it looks great and it doesn't smell good. So you know what's coming up. You give it a sniffy sip. So swirl it around. Again, what we're doing is volatilizing the esters, which are those aromatic components. Volatility means the ability to vaporize. So the shape of the glass, as we've often spoke, is going to really sort of be critical in how you smell. So get your nose in there and smell Viognier and fall in love with all those aromas that Viognier gives you. So right off the bat, and this is where is it there or is it psychological? Because I always think white peach. I get a lot of sort of peach and really sort of beautiful cantaloupe sort of flavors as well. And then you get sort of, and it's weird to say, but I always get sort of linen that's just been cleaned and washed. That has that sort of linen, and then you have that sort of white flower kind of characteristic in there. But it's beautifully expressive. And when you think of Viognier, I always think of in terms of Torrontés or Gewürztraminer. It has that same sort of aromatic intensity. And again, go back, and it's going to change in the glass. This wine was only bottled at the end of January, so it is a relatively young wine. The other thing is, as the wine warms up, if you've had it cold, the flavors and the aromas are going to change quite considerably. But what I really love about Viognier is how just alluring and exotic the nose is. So again, I really take time and smelling the wine, because what smelling the wine really does is just sets yourself up for that palate. So aromatically speaking, I think that's such a part of wine that we need to focus on. And Viognier just over delivers in that. It's just beautifully vibrant and perfumey and floral. Freshly cut flowers, and then you get that really beautiful core of yellow fruit. Now, again, when you taste it, stick it in the palate, rinse it around. What you should find is that the acid, you're going to pick it up more in the front of the palate. It's going to have some, I hope, it's going to have some wonderful acidity, but it cannot just be acidic and fresh and vibrant and then just fall off a cliff type thing. It has to have some length. It has to have some weight. Because Viognier does have some power. It does have some complexity. We're trying to make a wine that is, again, it has finesse, obviously, and it has that sort of beautiful floral and fruit on the palate, but it has weight, it has texture, it has length. Length defined really once you swallow the wine. Does it persist? Does it stay in your mouth for 30, 40 seconds, or does it just disappear? So let's jump in and taste it, because this is the fun part of what we do. So cheers to you. We'll talk another 2 minutes about the wine, and then we'll take some questions. But okay, so I'm expecting something phenomenal because I love this nose. So here we go. I guess I'm not tasting because I would spit. I'm just drinking. It's definitely got acidity. It's very sort of bright. It really sort of cuts, and says, I'm pretty serious. I have tension. I have vivacity. But it's got really, I can also taste it down the sides here. So it's got some tannins, so to speak. It's got weight. It's got richness. It's got length. Perhaps maybe a touch cold. Again, I think if you're going to taste, maybe slightly warmer. But it's very clean. It's very sort of vibrant. So let's jump in. It's a serious wine. You know, it's very rich, but it really has focus. You know, it's not just all over the place. It knows exactly where it's going, kind of thing. You know, it's got lovely acidity, and it's a baby. You know, Viognier, everyone says wines you drink whites like early, and I find our Viognier 6 months to 2 to 3 years. That's the sweet spot of drinking Viognier. In terms of aging longer than sort of 4 to 5, Viognier is not really known to age that well. But I think, you know, 6 months to 2 to 3 years, this wine is singing. You know, we bottled it January 31st, I believe it was. So we're looking at, what, 5 months in the bottle? I mean, this is an infant. You know, it's going to sort of spread out a little bit. It's going to shed some of its baby fat. The acid is going to mean that you can lay it down. The acid also means that it's a great food wine. I know we always talk about wines to drink, and we want to make sure that if you just want to drink and smack a bottle of Keswick wines on the porch, you can do that. But this goes really, really well with sort of oilier, textured, something like monkfish. Seafood, like monkfish, oilier dishes. The acidity in the Viognier is going to cut right through that. It does well with sort of spicy foods. We had Thai food tonight, and it does incredibly well with sort of spicy foods as well. But it's a beautiful, beautiful wine. 2019, an incredible vintage. Again, at the end of the day, the wine is not a product of me. It's more a product of the, you know, our crew, Manuel and Rebecca and Lewis and the folks that kind of work in the vineyard. But it's also a product of an incredible site and a vintage that just put that sort of raw product on the crush pad. Handled very minimalistically, you know, not intervened too much. It was fermented cool, you know, for about 2 weeks. It's a little warmer than what we normally do. We normally do 3 to 4 weeks. We decided just to go a little bit higher in the fermentation process and blow some of those sort of candied fruit kind of flavors in there. Non-ML, again, we work very, very hard in the vineyard to conserve acidity. So in the winery, we do exactly the same, which is also, I think, a reason we've moved away from the use of barrels. You know, barrels can be used, but I think you need an opulence, you need a ripeness, you need a flavor profile where the oak can really help that. And I find our Viogniers of past have been sort of skin contact, which we don't do anymore, have been sort of barrel fermented and matured, which we don't do anymore. I'm really liking this style. It's vibrant, it's drinkable, it communicates, you know, everything we did in the vineyard, and I hope you love it. So let me know, and let me ask Kath if there are any questions or comments or anything that we can answer so far.
A couple comments. Dennis Sigmali says Viognier reminds him of Riesling and that it can be made in a lot of different styles.
Yeah, Dennis Sugameli, I think that is a very, very, very good point. Viognier can be a bit of a chameleon grape. I have tasted a lot of Virginia Viogniers, and I find them to be all over the show. And it's hard to pigeonhole what Virginia Viognier is. You know, you get tank versions, you get a combination of barrel and tank, you get... I've tasted some Viogniers that are a little over the top for me. You know, the alcohol's a little, they come across as warm, and the use of oak is not really balanced. I've had everywhere from dry to off-dry to dessert. Again, I think wine has to be an expression of your personality as a winemaker, but more importantly, it really has to communicate the signature, the fingerprint, the soul, the character of the vineyard. And as you know, I think that... if not all our wines, other than the lait vendange and the dessert, we make dry wines. But I agree, like Riesling, it has a lot of applications, and hopefully at the end of the day, it's an expression of the winemaker and the site. But fair point, Dennis. Thank you so much. I appreciate that comment.
And then Marcia asked if you mix the Viognier with anything, or if it's 100% Viognier.
Marcia Sugameli asked, are we blending Viognier with anything else? This Viognier has a touch of Vidal Blanc in it. Vidal Blanc is actually interplanted in more so on the side block. This comes from the front, so it's probably got 1 or 2% Vidal Blanc in there. But for the most part, it's a single varietal Viognier. You know, Viognier is a wonderful blending component into Chardonnay to give it sort of aromatic intensity. I know one way, people use acidity is by adding something like Petit Manseng, which gets really ripe but has really lovely and vibrant acidity. But for this is mainly Viognier now. The side block, the Le Vendange, has got a little bit more Vidal Blanc in there, and that's just interplant in there. So great question. But yeah, probably 98-99% of it is Viognier, to be honest. Thank you, Marsha. I hope you're doing well.
Since you mentioned that LVD, Terry Hauser said that she's really enjoying the LVD Viognier. Is that treated differently than this one?
Terry Hauser, good evening to you, by the way, Terry. I hope you're doing well. How is this different from the LVA Viognier? So the Le Vendange, our second label, I think in a couple of ways. They share similarities. They come from two different blocks that are slightly different. The side block is a little bit cooler. It's a lower elevation. It ripens probably around a week to 10 days, behind the vineyard in the front. We kind of pick it on the same sort of parameters. We're looking for sort of freshness and vibrancy and that balance between flavors. It's also tank fermented. But it's a different yeast. The fermentation kinetics are a little bit different. And the Le Vendange Viognier in past has always been sort of not noticeably sweet, but it's just barely above that dry threshold. It's been 0.6, 0.7, 0.8 grams or 8% residual sugar, which is about 8 grams per liter. The Le Vendange this year is actually dry. It's the first time we've made a dry Le Vendange Viognier. Now, when we talk about dry versus sweet, it's the perception of residual sugar. A dry wine can still have up to about 5 or 6 grams per liter in it. So it's not technically dry, but the Le Vendange differs slightly. I think in the bottle and in the glass, they come across incredibly differently, but it's the same philosophy. The philosophy for us is we're going to treat every grape that we harvest, no matter if it comes from our prize blocks to our entry-level wines, we're going to make the best version possible, but subtle differences that really manifest themselves quite heavily in the glass as well. The Le Vendange is a beautiful wine. I am thrilled with it. The 18 was one of only 6 18 whites that got a Governor's Cup Gold. The 19, I think the 19 might be the best Le Vendange we've ever made. I'm excited for you to try it. It was bottled. It's now available. But I love this wine, and I hope you do too. But I hope that answers your question, Terry.
Tiffany Powell asked, if Viognier is so tough to grow viticulturally, why is it so popular in Virginia?
The question is, why is Viognier so popular in Virginia? I would answer that probably saying, I think it used to be popular in Virginia. I think it's tough to get people to put Viognier on the ground. I'm not hearing a lot of people are planting more Viognier just because of the low yields. There are easier grapes to grow. I think there are other grapes that have more acidity and produce more fruit. I still think it makes some of the most interesting kind of wines. It seems to be a little hit and miss with consumers. I think those that come to our place really like the Viognier, but I also met some people that, they love Chardonnay and they love Pinot Gris. That's their staple wine. And but I think, and remind me or fact check me, but I think less than 1/3 of Virginia wineries actually grow Viognier. I would say probably the most, the factor that maybe affects that decision the most is how finicky it is viticulturally. It's not only is it a low cropping grape essentially, it's also heavily prone to frost. Unfortunately, we found that out this year. Because it buds fairly early, it is prone to frost. And it also, because of the humidity, you got to kind of stay on top of the canopy management because it can be pretty susceptible to mildews as well. So it's a challenging grape, but it's one that I don't think we should give up on. I think it makes really intriguing wines, very layered wines. It's a little bit ethereal. I love Viognier, but I've had a love-hate relationship with it. It drives me nuts when I think I might have a handle on it. It reminds me very quickly that I don't. And it's a wine that I've tinkered around with a lot. I've been very fortunate to work with 16 acres, so we've done different sort of picking parameters and yeast and oak and tank and residual sugars. And I think we're now coming, to a style that really defines our vineyard. And I think it's more sort of elegance and vibrancy and freshness, moving away from the really rich hedonistic kind of wines. And I think that's going to really play to what consumers are looking for as well. So I hope that sort of answers it. I know it took me a while to get there. So
Dennis asks, is it still considered a state grape?
It never officially was the state grape. I know that it's really, I think it's a varietal that does well, but I don't think it's officially being promoted as the state grape of Virginia. There's more Chardonnay planted in Monticello than Viognier. It really makes wines that belong in the conversation of putting Virginia on the map and making wines that are world class. But I don't think that's the case anymore. And again, if someone's on there and can fact check that for me, I would appreciate it. But I don't think it is being promoted as the state grape of Virginia. If you want my personal opinion, I think Cabernet Franc should be. So there you go.
It looks like in 2011, Viognier was designated Virginia's official signature grape by the Virginia Wine Board.
Okay, there we go. Kath said in 2011 it was, and maybe she can check if it still is. But there you go. Let's see. Do you use any bentonite clay to clarify it? We do. So bentonite is what we use to protein fine the wine. If we weren't doing that, what would happen is the wine would heat up and those proteins would sort of manifest themselves in terms of a haze. So we use a calcitic or a sodium bentonite. It's a swell bentonite. We mix it to the wine, it reacts with the proteins in the wine, we rack it off of the wine's protein stable. So Dennis, we do use bentonite, around 40 grams per hectoliter, if you wanted to know that too. So yeah.
Kimberly asked, and good question, have you considered making a Sauvignon Blanc?
Kimberly, I love Sauvignon Blanc. I love it. I really think Sauvignon Blanc requires the sight that Keswick does not have. I would love to make Sauvignon Blanc. The closest I get to making a Sauvignon Blanc is making our V squared, which is a very sort of thiolytic kind of character. What I mean by that, a thiol is a sulfhydryl compound, gives you that sort of flinty and that gunsmoke kind of character. I am resigned to the fact that I am drinking a ton of Sauvignon Blanc, but I don't think we can grow the kind of Sauvignon Blanc that I would love to kind of make. I love it. I wish I could grow it, but I think we need elevation. Keswick is not blessed with elevation. What we are blessed is incredible soils, incredible drainage, which really allows us to make phenomenal Viognier, Chardonnay, Cab Franc, Cab Sauv, Merlot, Petit Verdot, and blends. Resigned to the fact that Pinot Noir, Riesling, and Sauvignon Blanc, wines that I absolutely adore, could not be planted on our property. But what I am excited, there are incredible producers of those wines in Virginia, and I will support and drink a lot of theirs. But I wish I could make it, but Kimberly, unfortunately, we just don't have the site to make Sauvignon Blanc there as well.
Cindy and Maureen want to know if you're going to make, what was it called? The dessert.
The nectar?
The nectar.
The question is, are we making dessert wine? And that would definitely come from my mother-in-law, Cindy. We are making nectar this year, but we are not making it from Viognier. Our dessert wine is currently still fermenting. It takes about 8 to 10 months to finish fermenting, and it's made exclusively 100% from incredibly frozen, ripe, delicious Petit Manseng grapes. It's the first time we've made Petit Manseng. We've now planted it on the property. This was Petit Manseng that we bought from a really incredible vineyard in North Garden. So yes, we are making a nectar from 2019. It's extraordinary, but it's not Viognier. It is Petit Manseng, but I'm excited about the possibility of getting this wine in the bottle. I'm loving what the Petit Manseng does as a dessert application, so it's coming up soon. So thank you so much, Cindy. But yeah, we'll have something for your sweet tooth.
And Sarah answered the question. So at one point, Viognier was considered the state grape, but a few years ago, the marketing office decided there is not one single grape to be called the grape of Virginia.
All right, I don't know if you heard that. So in 2011, the marketing office said Virginia state grape is Viognier, but a couple of years ago, they came out and said there's not a single grape that should be defined as the state grape. So what I think that means is that Kath and I were both right. So yeah, it's hard to sort of pigeonhole into what Virginia does well, because what I think Virginia does incredibly well, excuse me, is a diverse style of wine. I mean, where else could you get incredible Pinot Noir, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Albarino, Tannat, Cab Franc, Petit Verdot, blends, Merlot, Viognier. There's Chenin Blanc being planted in the grape, Fiano, Vermentino, Sangiovese, Nebbiolo. How do you take Virginia, which is so eclectic and so diverse, and it has so many macro, micro, and meso climates, and say, consumers, this is what Virginia does? I think we've got to embrace the fact that we do a lot of things incredibly well, but what that means for us is that as a winery, as a vineyard site in Keswick Vineyards, the only thing that we can do is to communicate to you, the consumer, what we're about in a glass of wine. And then to make sure that we do that consistently year to year. I think we do Viognier incredibly well. I love sort of the approach because, again, let's be honest, I don't know anything about wine. I don't know what the next wines are going to taste like. Obviously you have vintage variation, you have growing seasons, you have vines that are maturing. I think Viognier really takes 15 to 20 to 30 years to really start showing character. At the end of the day, consumer preferences change. But I think I love this style. I love the sort of fresh, vibrant, but still typically you're not going to put your nose in it and say, I think that's Chardonnay, I think that's Sauvignon Blanc. No, you're going to go, that is aromatic, that's floral, that's perfumey, it's got that really exotic expression. This is Viognier, but it's got vibrancy, it's got acidity, it's light and it's textured, it's got that acid. I think that's all you can do as a wine grower. Because at the end of the day, I'm not a winemaker, I'm just a farmer. At the end of the day, what we try and do is tell you our story when you taste this glass of wine. I never, ever want anyone to say that's a wine Stephen made. This has to be a Keswick wine. Doesn't matter who the winemaker is, who the grower is. This is a Keswick wine because this is a reflection of where the grapes grown, how they were managed. And again, it's essentially, Keswick's DNA. It's Keswick's fingerprint in a glass of wine. This is not mine. If I were making wine in a different part of the world, the wine should reflect the soul and character of the Viognier, of the vineyard, so to speak. Question is from love.wine.dog. Is that Terry, I would imagine? How long would you cellar this? I think the sweet spot for this wine would be 6 months to about 2 to 3 years. Again, I apologize. Longer than that, we had our 2002 Viognier about 6 months ago, and it was surprisingly quite vibrant and delicious. But I wouldn't say there was added benefit for laying this down longer than 3 years. I think short-term to medium-term sort of aging would be wonderful, but longer than that, I haven't found many aged Viogniers that I really enjoy because the alcohol tends to come through a bit. It gets really oily. It's get really, really sort of flabby. So I would say drink this from 6 months through 3 years, and it's phenomenal. It's delicious. I'll put 1 or 2 bottles aside just to see if it could age, but I don't think you need to. I think that's its sweet spot. Let's see. Who else is there? What else is there? Sarah says, how does temperature affect the wine? And I think quite dramatically. I think when you're tasting wines to critique wines when they are warm or ambient room temperature, they're naked. There's nothing to hide away. When you're drinking wines for sort of personal consumption and pleasure, slightly chilled, but it's going to mute the aromatics. It's really going to accentuate maybe acidity. So temperature is really sort of, number one, it's a personal choice, but I think if you're analyzing and drinking wines analytically, trying to learn the grape, drinking them warmer than you would normally serve them to drink them. If I were to drink this just to sit and drink, I'd probably serve it a little bit chillier. But I also think that we serve our white wines too cold and our red wines too warm. I love a slight chill on our reds, and I love the warmth and the expression of aromatics that that temperature does to Viognier. I want to jump in and talk more about the wine, but let me tell you how you can get this wine. So again, if you're in the wine club, it's a 30% discount on the wine. This retails $28.95, I believe it is. So on the website, whether you buy 1 bottle, 3 bottles, 6 bottles, or a case, and I hope you buy 6 bottles or a case, because it's always worth buying more than one. Drink one, love it, make sure you have another one. 30% discount to all of you that are in the wine club. If you're not in the wine club, you really should be. It's an incredible club to be a part of. But if you're not, and we understand there's reasons why you're not, you can buy the wine, you can get a 15% discount on the wine, and then free shipping on 6 bottles or more. The other question we had is the barrel club. Do we still sell barrels? And just to jump in, total tangent, but yes, we do. There's another club that you can belong to that is phenomenal. Discounts, wines. Be a part of our family in whatever capacity. Be in one of our clubs. It's not a long-term commitment. It's 6 months. We look after you, treat you like family. We have wines just for you. But if you're in the wine club, 30% discount on this beautifully expressive and amazingly complex, gorgeous Viognier. If you're not, 15% and shipping on 6 bottles or more. Tracy says, can you tell us the difference between the signature Viognier, the Viognier, and the Le Vendange? It's a phenomenal question. Thank you. The difference is $10 and $5. Joking, obviously. But so the signature series really is a way to communicate to you what we think is the best expression of that grape in that particular year. The theory is if you sign your name on something, you're endorsing it, right? That's the only thing you can give as a quality stamp, right? So the signature series Viognier has generally been barrel fermented and matured, so slightly less acidity, a little bit more textural, a little bit more voluptuous, has sort of a creaminess to it, but it still has the fruit. The Viognier and the Le Vendange Viognier this year are slight differences in terms of residual sugar. The Le Vendange Viognier has a little bit more portion of Vidal Blanc in there as well. It's 22%. In past, the Viognier was a blend of barrel fermented Viognier with tank fermented Viognier, where the Le Vendange was 100% tank fermented with some noticeable residual sugar in the region of around 0.6, 0.7% as well. But I think what we decided to do was, to try and make more of less wines. It's hard to make 6 different wines that communicate a style, and we didn't want to make sure that this one just had oak and that was tank. That wasn't a good enough reason to slap a label on it as well. So I think what we've done is created a wine that is an expression of, number one, a great growing season, of us as wine growers, and I think you as a consumer are going to absolutely love Viognier. But in the past, that has been the difference. Let's see what else there.
So Michael Franz, who you were just talking about the Barrel Club, he just joined today, so welcome to the Barrel Club. Michael? Mm-hmm.
Michael, congratulations. Thank you for buying a barrel. What you do when you buy a barrel, you join an exclusive club whereby you can taste wines out of your barrel. You get a case every time we use the barrel. We're going to talk to you about what's going to go into your barrel. You do have a say in what varietal goes in there. I'm excited to get to know you a little bit more and talk about wine. So thank you so much. I hope you find it as exciting as we think it is. And welcome to the club. Tell everybody about it, by the way. Susan Glenn, how about growing Chenin Blanc? Now, when you talk about Chenin Blanc, you're sort of tugging on the heartstrings, because South Africa makes 50% of the world production of Chenin Blanc in the world. I think it's an incredible grape. It has texture and it has richness. I think if you put Viognier in a barrel, there's a lot of similarities between Chenin Blanc. The problem, Susan, I think, is our site is just not conducive to that varietal. I think you need a warmer but cooler site. Warmer days, cooler evenings. I think it would do well in a Mediterranean or a maritime climate. We're subtropical humid. I love Chenin Blanc. I would love to make Chenin Blanc. I just don't think it's going to reflect, our unique soil and our characteristics. So I love it as a consumer, but as a grower at Keswick, I don't think we can make the kind of Chenin Blanc. Because at the end of the day, we're not trying to make good wines. We're trying to make world-class wines. So we're not going to make Nebbiolo like they do in the Piedemonte region. We're not going to make Zinfandel like they do in California. We know that. We're not going to make Pinot Noir like they do in Burgundy. We're not going to make Sauvignon Blanc like they do in New Zealand. All we can really do is to say, these are our strengths. This is what I think we can do well. Obviously, there's varietals. Like, I'd be very interested in Albarino. Something like Tannat. Everyone says, why don't you grow Tannat? It's a big... People are loving Tannat and drinking Tannat. Tannat's not cold hardy, so, to plant it on our property just doesn't work. So I think our property really, if you really define the core varietals, it is perfectly suited for Cab Franc, Cab Sav, PV, Merlot, Chardonnay's exquisite, and Viognier. Saying that, though, there are challenges with growing Viognier and Chardonnay in Virginia and at Keswick. 2020, you're not going to get a lot of Viognier and Chardonnay just due to the frost. And that is a tough thing to do, and perhaps that's another answer to the question, why don't people plant a lot of Viognier? If your livelihood is on grapes and you're selling it by the ton, it's hard to sell what I think is exotic and expressive and beautiful, and if you're as a grape grower can only get a ton or two an acre. Let's see. There's something about why I asked the question. Great info. I'm not sure if I missed the question. If not, I will get on that as well. Let's see.
Leslie asked, do you leave the leaves in any of the Viognier wines?
By the way, this wine, now that it's warmed up and it's got some air in it, it's just beautiful. Yeah, we do a lot of lees work, and we've been focusing more on, so the lees, if you don't know, is the spent or the dead yeast after the primary fermentation has been finished. So we don't work with gross lees, and the way I define gross lees is if you stirred up a tank, what dropped to the bottom in 24 hours would be gross. We work with very much fine lees. Fine lees has the sweetness to it as well. It has manoproteins in it as well. So what it can do, it can soften sometimes the phenolic character of Viognier, but it comes down to also how you press it. We press it extremely gently, but yeah, we store all of our wines on fine lees. Sometimes we even take Viognier fine lees and we put it into Chardonnay or even to some of the reds just to give it some sort of aromatic intensity. So I think it's a part of winemaking that, what was once maybe discarded as let's get rid of it, let's clean the wine up. I look at as liquid gold. Lees, what it can do for texture is critical, especially with Viognier, and that's how maybe this wine has got acidity and vibrancy, and it's fresh and it's bright, but it still has texture and its weight. And that's, at the end of the day, how do you make a wine that is drinkable but age-worthy plus drinkable, has freshness and vibrancy but still has character and kind of layers and complexity to it as well. And I think with Viognier, it is very much using the spent lees or the dead yeast. So that's a great question, and thank you. But yeah, we do a lot of lees work on all of our wines. Sarah Khan asked, I don't know a lot about Viognier on a global scale. Generally seems to be a niche or blending grape in general. So apparently Thomas Jefferson visited Chateau Chateau Gruyere. Okay, so that is up in the northern Rhone. I don't know much about the history in terms of Thomas Jefferson and Viognier. It does seem to be a bit of a niche though, Sarah. I would agree with you. It's certainly in the conversation of sort of commercial grapes, you always think Pinot Gris, Sauvignon Blanc, Riesling, and Chardonnay. From a quality point of view, from a purely sort of intellectual and an emotional level, I think Viognier belongs in that sort of conversation. But in terms of mass production, I don't think Viognier is ever in the in the 60s. There was less than sort of 30 hectares, and what's a hectare? 2.6 acres. There was less than, say, 80 acres of this grape planted worldwide. It was almost extinct until sort of smatterings were planted. But I definitely do think it's a niche. And I think, Virginia has a market opportunity, to say that here's a wine that we do incredibly well. You're not competing with 100 million different brands. It's a small sort of market segment. But I think in terms of what you're saying, you're 100% correct. It is a niche market, but it makes incredibly exotic and layered wines. It really belongs on wine lists, really belongs in your cellar. So, great question. Let's see who else is there. I know we've got about 5 or so minutes, unless you want me to keep chatting. I'm happy. I've got about a quarter of a bottle left, which will take me another 5 minutes or so. Another question about how long can you sell a Viognier? Short to midterm, and what I mean by that is maybe 2 or 3 years. Again, I think time is not always kind to Viognier. I think the alcohol can sometimes shine through, but I think also Viognier, along with Chardonnay, you can really judge a winemaker's ability, and then obviously the strength of the vineyard through the Viognier. Because I find Viogniers very difficult to get balanced. Again, if you pick it underripe, it's like I say, it's an angry Sauvignon Blanc, and if you pick it overripe, you get these hedonistic, over-the-top sort of flavors. It's hard to make balanced Viognier. The picking window and how you deal with it in the cellar, there's perhaps a bit of a deft touch. I'm not saying I have it. I'm still learning about it, but I think this is more a nod to our incredible vineyard crew and our incredible site. And then obviously with Mother Nature playing along in 2019, it was just a phenomenal vintage. And then when you have those parameters, it's very similar to a chef. You give 10 chefs the same sort of fish, and you come up with 10 different dishes. Same thing with Viognier. It starts off with an incredible product, which we had, and then obviously we can manipulate it as such. But we always want to make sure that, again, we express in the glass how the grape was grown. We want to make sure that as a consumer, this is recognizable as, number one, Virginia, and then hopefully, there's something about this wine that says, that might be Keswick. And if we do that, and if there's a character in there that transcends year to year despite the vintage variation, then we are doing something right as farmers. Because again, we're not making wine. Otherwise, we would, take our time and not give the vineyard the time, because you could do it in the cellar. It really is like any grape. If you look at a good wine, a fabulous wine, a wine that wins awards and gets esteem, I think any winemaker would say, you know what, the credit needs to go to the folks that farmed it and the vineyard that it came from, because that is what makes wine special. So let me see, we've got a few more minutes. Michael said, will you be doing the consensus program this year? The honest answer is we don't know. Obviously with COVID, we had to take a step back and make sure that, number one, we could open safely, and then we're heading into a season that is very, very busy for us. We've got 2 more bottlings to do, and then we head into harvest. So I think we will do the 2019 consensus, but perhaps we will do it in the year 2020, which, again, let me explain why that's not a bad idea, is because those wines are aging in the barrel. You're going to work with wines that have had a year and a half in the barrel. It's going to be phenomenal. So we don't have a correct answer for you. Perhaps maybe in December, November, perhaps next year. We are chatting about it. We will get back to you. But Consensus is obviously a very special program to us and to you. So we will try and do it as when we can. What else can we chat about? Before we finish up on the wine, let me just say this. We always want to preach, compassion and kindness as a human race. I know everyone on you're phenomenal people, and we just want to make sure that we all do our bit to make the world a better place. So God bless you and your families. Hope you guys are safe and sound and doing what needs to be done. And also, listen, we appreciate, don't get me wrong, we appreciate you spending your valuable time with us. We appreciate you buying our wines. We appreciate all the love and the support and the people that have reached out. We appreciate you coming to visit us. So really, thank you very much for everything that you've done for us. I mean, what I do is really a pleasure. It's not work. It seems like it is sometimes, especially when you're spraying the vineyards at night through the night like I did last night. But the reason we do this, the reason we enjoy it, is because of you, or should I say y'all. And I just, on behalf of obviously Al and Cindy and Brian and Chris and Kathy and, our whole family, and then our family includes all our staff, we just want to say thank you. Thank you for everything that you do. We really appreciate it. I hope you don't forget that. So let's see. What else? Do we have any other questions, Kath? Or
Kevin was asking how many cases did you make of this Viognier?
Kevin Norfleet said, how many cases did we make? We made 300 cases, Kevin. We made 300 cases. No, I lie. I apologize. We made 222 cases of the Viognier. We made 300 cases of the Le Vendange Viognier. So it, I believe, has gone to the wine club. It's in the bundle, so there's not a heck of a lot left. It's not a sales technique, I promise you, but if you love it, grab it. Take advantage of the discount. 30% I think is a phenomenal discount, but 222 cases on the 2019 Keswick Estate Viognier. It's on the website, keswickvineyards.com. The other thing is, let people know that we kind of chit chat next week. We're talking about the Trevelyan white wine, and the following week we're talking about the Trevelyan red. And the other thing, hopefully we'll have something to sort of tell you next week, but we are looking to doing a virtual barrel tasting. The concept is we're going to take some samples out of a barrel, we're going to send it to you, we're going to talk about wines that are going to be bottled in the future. Let me know if that's something you're interested in. We would love to get your feedback, but we're excited about the wines as they mature. The 19s are phenomenal. We've still got 217 vintage wines. Our super premium Cabernet and our Heritage are in the barrel. I taste it not because I need to know any more about it. I taste it because I just love drinking the wine. We've got some exciting stuff. Someone said, why join the wine club? Why not join the wine club? You can come Monday through Thursday and you can get a free glass of wine. Until we can open up normally, you get incredible discounts on our wines. You get to be part of our family. We do Consensus, which is a wine club event. We're making wines just for you, wine club members. And obviously there are incredible wine clubs in Virginia, but perhaps you want to join ours. It's a 6-month commitment. It's a flat fee. Pick your wines up. Don't have it shipped. Pick your wines up and get a glass of wine for free and come say hi. Tell us how you're doing. But those are some of the reasons. If you want any other details about our wine club or how to join our barrel club, check out our website, keswickvineyards.com, and talk to other barrel members. If you're a barrel member and you're online, let people know what works and what doesn't. I'm not saying sell it. Just tell them your honest impression. Really appreciate it. So let's do final thoughts on this wine. Let's see. So Viognier is perhaps misunderstood, somewhat an enigma. The history is somewhat obscure, but I love that. I think that defines this grape pretty simply. It's a tough grape. Don't get me wrong. It drives me bonkers, but I love working with it. I still haven't got it right. We still haven't got it right. And I think what's really exciting is that I always say Keswick's best wines are still to be made. Let me say that again. Keswick's best wines are still to be made. And I think that's scary not only for Keswick, but for Virginia. We've only been making wine and planting grapes since 1976 as a state. We're young. We've got incredibly talented people in the state. We've got incredibly talented winemakers and vineyard managers. And once we start figuring this out, I think the quality is going to explode. I'm excited about what the future holds, and I hope you do too. One thing I always say is right now, local vendors, wineries, cideries, breweries could all support your help. I haven't tried anything other than Virginia wines for the last couple of months, and we'll continue to do so, and I hope you do too. I think Virginia is an eclectic state. There's incredible wineries to support. I thought I saw Scott Eller from Ducard, another winery you should visit. We're going to do a tasting with him coming up soon in August. I love wine. I love Virginia wine. I think Virginia makes some of the most amazing wines. by people that have, passion, and a tenacity and a vibrancy and, a spirit of let's do better. And, Keswick's still going to make its best wines. So, let's see if there's any other questions.
Chris wants to know why you didn't make her favorite signature series.
Oh, Chris. Yeah, Chris Schoenberg, my sister-in-law, Chris. Hey, Chris, love you, by the way. I hope you and Tiger Lee are doing well. Why we didn't make signature series? If we did it every year, it would just be a commodity. But if we did it every other second or third or fourth year, it makes it special. And just as special as you are. I always think of you when I make the signature series, Viognier. So it's not something you can do every year. It's that unique. So I don't know if that's a right answer, but we just sort of, we'll make a signature series again. We just backed it up a little bit here and made a wine that I think was a little bit more vibrant and a little bit more focused. But I think there's a signature series in there as well. So gosh, my word, it's 8:05. I can talk forever. Let's see if there's one or two more questions, and then let's just say our goodbyes and final thoughts and go from there. So what do you think, sweetheart? Anything else? I think we've covered it. So let me go everything again. Viognier, best sort of varietal. I think Virginia does an incredible job with it. One of two. It's on our website, keswickvineyards.com. It's 30% to the wine club, 15% if you're not in the wine club, but we hope that you want to join our wine club. 6 bottles or more gets you free shipping. Otherwise, just let us know. Come pick it up.
Questions. If they join the wine club tonight, can they get the wine club discount on this wine tonight? And yes, you can.
Yes. If you join the wine club tonight, you get the benefits ASAP straight away. It's like you've been in the wine club for your whole life. So you join the wine club tonight, you get that 30%, no problem. If you are, and whoever that is, welcome. I know you're not going to be disappointed. I wish I could tell you all the amazing wines that are going to come your way. Actually, I could tell you that. Incredible Chardonnay, Petit Verdot, Cab Franc, Cab Sav, Merlot, Heritage, and an incredible Estate Rosé that are coming for you. And then 2 block designated Cab Francs, 2 block designated Merlots, just for you in the wine club. So yeah, but you get the discount straight away. So an enigmatic, a misunderstood, a challenging grape, but one that is phenomenal. I think Virginia does incredibly well. And again, let me just say thank you. Thank you for joining us. Please kind of let people know if you find this somewhat interesting and somewhat entertaining. Tell people to join us. We'd love to. Mark, if you're in the BVI and you're still watching this, hey buddy, hope you're doing well. I wanted to give a shout out to Mark. And again, gosh, I love Viognier, I love Keswick, I love all of you. Thank you so much for everything that you do and support. I cannot tell you how much we appreciate it. And God bless. Have the most amazing week. And I will see you in 6 days and 23 hours. Trevelyan White, it's phenomenal, followed by the Trevelyan Red, and then some pretty exciting stuff after that. So God bless you all. God bless you and your families. Be the best you can be. Thank you very much for everything. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.